Are you sure?
Yes.
Are we rolling?
Yes, we are
sure?
indeed rolling.
All right.
I find that
Hey,
difficult.
welcome. You find it hard to believe? No, it's true. It's true, Jonathan. We're alive. All right. And you know what today is? Do you know?
It's Monday?
It is Monday, but it's also the last day of the Power Rangers Kickstarter. We are creeping up on the final 24 hours. We're at 30-something hours. I don't know, something like that.
On the final day.
The final day. So we're the dawn of the final day, coming up on the final 24 hours. It ends tomorrow. My sources tell me at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Tuesday. So 7 o'clock out here in California on Tuesday. That's when the campaign ends for Psycho Rangers and Machine Empire, which is Villain Pack number 2, and the cool storage box and all that stuff. And we're doing pretty good. So far so good. Hopefully everybody's really happy. Just again, we like giving you the same updates over and over because that way people are informed. Allies Pack is shipping now, so they're on their way. I've actually seen a couple posts of people that have received them in different areas. But sit tight, they're just starting now. Give it a couple weeks, and the Allies Pack will be in your hot little hands soon. So this is also the end of Phase 2. This is it. We're once this expansion, these 2 expansions released in September, it's the end of Phase 2. And then next year will be Phase 3, and we're not going to tell you anything about that. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn things over to Jonathan, and he's going to go into details about what...
All right, let's talk about some villains.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's see. So, Desiree, you're going to boot us up with, I think, we'll kick off with Psycho Red, the leader of the Psycho Rangers.
All right, and that is up for you.
So, one thing to know about the way the Psycho Rangers work is that all of them actually have a shared combat deck. And so whenever you're fighting the Psycho Rangers, you're sort of pulling from that deck. But each individual Psycho Ranger will add special cards to that deck, which show their fighting style. And if that Ranger is occasionally not in the fight, then those cards are just put on the bottom, and you'll reveal another card for whoever you're fighting. But in general, the Psycho Rangers all have a broadly similar fighting style of really ruining the Ranger's day. But Psycho Red in particular, his ability, his main power weapon card right here, you'll see, is the Psycho Sword. Nice and straightforward. It's fast, and it deals 5 damage to the lead Ranger. Just a nice solid hit. His special ability, Path of Flame, which you will encounter when the Psycho Rangers are encountered as a boss, or if you're using the Psycho Red as an individual monster, you will likely encounter Path of Flame, which, while this card is in play, each time a defeated enemy card resolves, deal 3 damage. So normally, in the game, when you are fighting enemies, you defeat them ahead of time so that when they resolve, they don't do anything to you, right? With Path of Flame, they hurt you anyway, so he sort of is constantly burning through Ranger cards, and it's pretty mean, and is an interesting answer to one of the most common strategies of Rangers avoiding damage. He sort of counters that. And let's see, we also have his Psycho ability, which is deal 4 damage to the attached Ranger. It's sort of the single target Psycho ability. Each Psycho Ranger is a Nemesis, which is a new enemy type, which we talked about on the Kickstarter, but for those of you who don't know, Nemesis is sort of a new style of monster. A Nemesis monster has a special ability on their deployment card. So when they come out, you will, depending on the situation, different scenarios will attach their deployment card in various ways. So in a normal game, if you're just using the Psychos as a monster, a Nemesis will generally attach to the lead Ranger of any given battle. So Psycho Red would, every time that Psycho symbol resolves on one of the Psycho Ranger cards, will resolve his unique ability. Thus, while all the Psycho Rangers share their Psycho Ranger deck, several of the cards will be like, resolve the Psycho effect, which means that the different Psycho Rangers will change what the individual cards will do. And so Psycho Red is kind of the nice, straightforward one. He's the leader. He's mean. He's not very friendly. I think, let's see, what are we going to do next? Let's move on to Psycho Yellow after this one. Can we bring that up?
Alright, and Yellow is up.
Alright. So Psycho Yellow is another one of my favorites. She's got the Psycho Slinger, which is 3 different Rangers must each discard from their hand the card with the most shields. Now, Rangers generally have about 3 cards in their deck with 3 shields, which is the highest you generally have, and 2 of them tend to be fairly strong cards, and one of them is their power weapon. So Psycho Slinger does kind of target the power weapons with its discard ability, but can also occasionally you can discard a different card if you happen to have that in hand. So the players do get to choose which card with the most shields they can discard if they have more than 1 card with 3 shields, which is a useful way to answer it. But otherwise, it's a strong kind of answer to the Ranger's stronger abilities. Path of Venom, which is Psycho Yellow's transformation into a horrible hornet monster. While this card is in play, each time a Ranger reveals a card for defense, you remove 1 shield from that card. So Psycho Yellow effectively causes the Ranger deck to lose a significant amount of defensive ability. Your 1 shield cards become 0 shields, your 2 shield cards become 1 shield. She just kind of plows through she causes all damage to plow through Ranger decks much more quickly. And also, like all of the different path cards, it will resolve their Psycho effect. And Psycho Yellow's Psycho effect is the attached Ranger must discard from their hand the card with the most shields. So it is effectively similar to the Psycho Slinger, but kind of occurs only to the attached Ranger repeatedly. So yeah, that's Psycho Yellow in a nutshell. She's pretty mean. I really love the sculpt of that giant. Yeah.
So somebody has a question about red in chat. So they say, hold on a second, I'm confused. Does that mean that both of the Psycho red cards will not go into the shared deck if red is not in the game?
Correct. Psycho Red's cards are not in the deck if Psycho Red is not in the game. You do not use, you only use the Psycho Ranger cards for the Psycho Rangers that have currently come out. So in the Psycho Assault game mode, which we've been a little coy about, Psycho Rangers appear over the course of a game. And as they appear, you will slowly be adding their cards to the Psycho Ranger deck, making it more dangerous and scarier. Until you finally get the big boss fight, which then adds all of their path cards. So yeah.
Yeah. So Joel says these guys are going to be tough. We've only shown you 2, Joel. Just wait.
Yep. Let's see. Next on the list of Psychos. Let's go Psycho Blue. He's sort of a nice companion to Psycho Yellow.
All right, and Blue is up.
Here we go. So Psycho Blue has a somewhat similar effect. 3 different Rangers for his Psycho Axe. 3 different Rangers which each discard from their hand the card with the highest energy cost. So, as with power weapons tend to have very high energy costs of 3 or so. Some of them are 2, some of them, yeah, and then other times Rangers just have useful cards at higher energy cost. Psycho Blue just kind of knocks those right out. His other ability, the Path of Frost, because Psycho Blue turns into a big ol' ice monster. While this card is in play, the shared energy pool cannot be greater than 2. Drain any excess energy. So he doesn't completely lock out Rangers as certain other effects might, but he does make it so that Rangers have a very difficult time playing power weapons, because you need at least 3 energy in the shared pool to play those. And other abilities, like, you kind of have to play much more slim with your energy costs. An interesting answer for this one is Turbo Red, who has a lot of X-cost energy cards, but he also has a card called Redline Slash, which, if the shared energy pool is empty, he gets a bonus on damage. So he's actually a pretty useful answer to cards that force you to run slim, even though he won't be able to spike as high. Let's see. And finally, of course, his Psycho ability. The attached Ranger must discard for the card from their hand with the highest energy cost. It kind of mirrors Psycho Yellow as well, where his Psycho ability is his Psycho weapon is a more enhanced version of his Psycho ability as a nemesis. So let's see. Who's next on the list? Let's go with Psycho Pink.
All right, and Pink is up, and I do have like a really quick question as far as these Psycho Rangers.
Yeah,
should it be considered for veteran players, or do you think anyone could play them?
I would not play against the Psycho Rangers if it's your first time playing. Just throwing that out there. They are very challenging, and some of their effects are a little more weird. If you want having them just as monsters could be doable, like it won't be too bad. But Psycho Assault is definitely for veteran players. I see in the chat someone asked how you decide which card Nemesis cards get attached to. So it varies depending on the mode. In the normal mode, as I had mentioned, Psycho, the Nemesis card is attached to the lead ranger in any given battle. But in Psycho Assault, as they come out, you will attach that card to a ranger that matches that Psycho Ranger's color if they do not have any Psycho Ranger cards. And otherwise, if there are multiple Rangers or whoever, you kind of decide one Ranger to have them. They spread out evenly, so you can't stack all of the Nemesis onto a single Ranger. But if you are playing with 6 Psychos and 3 players, then each Ranger can have up to 2 Nemesis cards attached to them. Hope that makes sense. Let's dive into Psycho Pink. Let's see. So Psycho Pink, her main power weapon is her Psycho Bow, which drains 2 energy and then deals 3 damage to the Ranger with the fewest cards in their deck. Similar to Scorpina and a few other monsters, this is very targeted damage. Normally, Rangers get to decide who takes what hits, which helps them kind of spread out the damage, but some enemies are going to target the Ranger with the fewest cards in their deck, making them much more likely to KO a Ranger. Path of Thorns is pretty mean. While this card is in play, each time a Ranger attacks this card or an adjacent enemy card, deal 2 damage to that Ranger. And then when this card resolves, resolve all Psycho effects. So Path of Thorns basically creates an area around itself that each time, if you attempt to target it or one of its adjacent cards, you're just going to take hits. It is pretty mean, and it is very, very powerful, particularly in Mastermind Mode, where you get a little more control over what adjacency you use. And we'll probably dive into Mastermind Mode a little more later on in the stream. Meanwhile, Psycho Pink, her character ability, which again, Psycho Bow is an enhanced version of, has drain 1 energy and deal 2 damage to the attached Ranger. Psycho Bow also has the guard keyword, making it allowing her to defend her allies as well with sort of suppressive fire. And that's Psycho Pink in a nutshell. Let's see.
So Jonathan, somebody wants to know, are the Psychos classed as monsters or bosses?
They are classed as monsters for most purposes. Nemesis enemies are generally considered monsters. They behave a little more like bosses in that they have usually more intense mechanics and hit pretty hard. They fall in a similar line to some of the scarier monsters like the Evil Green Ranger or Finster or Poluticorn, who are all like on the tougher end of the normal monsters. Got a barking dog out here. Hope that's not too interrupting.
The Psychos are scary. They disturb dogs.
Yeah. But yeah, so Nemesis enemies will generally be monsters, and they have sort of special rules, but you'll be able to encounter them somewhat more regularly. But in some games or in some scenarios, they may be substituted in for bosses, and there'll be no slouches at that level.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Let's see. After Pink, let's go with Black. Psycho Black.
All right, and that one is up.
Psycho Black. So I love the Psycho Black Ranger with his weird kind of like horned staff. So his Psycho Staff is very straightforward. Deal 3 damage to each Ranger, and it has guard. It's just a nice, solid defensive card that hits hard. His Path of Stone has, while this card is in play, the health value of all other enemy cards is increased by 1. This can be quite difficult because it does not have the guard keyword, meaning all cards that are guarding it also have increased health and have to be chewed through before you can even start targeting the Path of Stone. Psycho Black is sort of the defensive member of the Psycho Rangers. And his Psycho ability, deal 3 damage to the attached Ranger and 2 damage to another Ranger, allowing him to deal kind of more AoE effects. The Rangers do get to choose who the other one to take the damage is, but he's pretty mean. Yes, someone asked, do each of these Psycho Rangers have these 2 cards and then the Psycho Generic ones? Yes. The Psycho Generic cards will often trigger the Psycho effects, meaning that depending on the Psycho Ranger you're fighting, the generic Psycho cards will operate differently. Let's see.
Cool. So somebody also picked up on that the deployment cards haven't been talked about, and the shape is a pentagon, diamond, or a hexagon. Does that mean you have to defeat 5 cards to defeat the Psychos?
It's sort of being a little cheeky because in Psycho Assault you do fight 5 Psychos over the course of the game, but we sort of the original design of the diamond we have a circle for foot soldiers, a diamond for monsters, and then the hexagon for bosses. That was a subtle indication early on of how many cards you need to defeat is kind of the number of sides on the shape. So 4 cards to defeat a monster, 6 cards to defeat a boss. Not many players actually picked up on that. I think it eventually people figured it out when I think Mega Goldar was accidentally printed with the monster icon, which again has no actual game effect, is just sort of suggestive of it. But with the Psycho Rangers, the Pentagon was sort of mostly meant to represent that they sit in a space somewhat between a normal monster and a boss.
Cool.
And plus, it looks cool and lets us see a little more of that awesome Dan Mora art. So
that's right.
But yeah, generally, if you are fighting them as monsters, you are fighting them as monsters, meaning that you only need to defeat 4 cards like normal.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
Oh god, Octagon, get ready. Let's see. So Psycho Black was nice and straightforward. Let's move on to Psycho Green. So the Psycho Green Ranger, for those of you who only watch the show, is featured very heavily in the Boom Studios comics. He was revealed to have been the first Psycho Ranger that was ever created, and he's a mean one. Let's see. So his card is Psycho Dagger, which has the fast keyword, and each Ranger must discard the top card of their deck. So this is a pure discard ability, meaning you can't mitigate it using damage reduction effects, and you're kind of up, and it's to try and control what you have on top of your deck, because there are a lot of Ranger abilities like the Mighty Morphin Blue Power, or a lot of the Black Space Ranger abilities, which allow you to manipulate the top card of your deck. Psycho Green just sort of knocks it right out, which can really heavily interrupt characters like TJ, the Blue Space Ranger, who a lot of his cards have to do with the top card of his deck and hoping it has a lot of shields. The Psycho Dagger just knocks that right out, regardless of how many shields are on it. His passive ability, Path of Cruelty, his horrible monster form, is while this card is in play, each time a Ranger, the first time each Ranger plays a card in battle, they must discard the top card of their deck. And so this will trigger immediately the first time any Ranger plays a card, but so you kind of track, so once each Ranger has played a card, the ability won't trigger again. But this ability can discard up to 5 cards from the top of Ranger decks as a result of them playing cards, which can be pretty intense. His Psycho ability is the attached Ranger and another Ranger must each discard the top card of their decks, which, again, his Psycho Dagger is a more intense version of that, but he just sort of forces discards without allowing you a chance to like play any defensive mitigation cards.
Yeah, that can really mess you up.
It's real mean. Let's see. So someone asked Path of Frost, could you still play a power weapon using 2 energy in the pool plus your stored energy? So you can never actually use your energy that is stored on your Ranger until you place it into the shared energy pool. That is kind of part of the core rules of the game, is that your stored energy isn't part of you have to make the choice to put your energy into the pool before it can be used. So the shared energy pool cannot have more than 2 energy in it, meaning that you basically cannot play power weapons with an energy cost of 3 or more while Path of Frost is in play. Unless, of course, you attempt to counter it using something like the Zeo Megazord or the Dagger Solo from the Green Ranger, which lowers all of the energy costs of cards, which can be a great answer if you're up against Psycho Blue. Let's see. So Path of Cruelty in 2-player mode. Let's see. Effectively, yeah, you discard 2 cards for the first time you play a card if you are controlling 2 Rangers, because effectively both Rangers are playing a card. It functionally doubles when controlling 2 Rangers. All right, let's see. And so that's all the Psycho Rangers. They are really mean, and when you fight them, and I'm really excited to see the playtest reports, the player reports as you guys get these. The playtesters had quite a time against these guys.
My prediction is that we're gonna see chat with like, oh my god, they're so hard. How do you, like, what do you do? But then that's the cool part of it, right? Like, you already started to drop some clues, like about Turbo Red and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, what is the right team that you put together to counter these guys?
Yeah, like I think team comp is going to be very important. Team composition is going to be very important when you're up against the Psycho Rangers, definitely. Yeah. I'm going to be really excited to see the first person on the Facebook group to announce that they managed to beat the scenario, because they're going to have a rough time.
Yeah, that's good. It'll be fun.
willing to say it is at least as tough as Cyclopsis, if not harder, who I think people have agreed is the toughest boss right now.
Yeah, well, kind of rightfully so, right?
Right? The Psycho Rangers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, all right, pretty cool.
Hey, let's follow this up. Let's go into the Machine Empire pack, which has some fun stuff. What do we say we start off with Prince Gasket? He's one of my favorites.
All right, and Prince Gasket is up.
Yep. Hang on. Let's see. Regarding the Psycho Ranger sculpt, which one is my favorite? Was a quick question, and I think Psycho Green might be my favorite. I'm a pretty big fan of Psycho Black, though. He's just got this nice, big, wide stance, and he looks really cool. And our win-loss ratio in the Psycho Assault playtest, I would say it's pretty skewed just because early on we were being very heavily dominated, and then we started winning a little more often, and then once we got the hang of it, we were like, okay, let's make this a touch harder. I would say we won about 45% on average, I think. I'd have to go back and check, but yeah, it was, oof, the Psychos were tough, and we knew they had to be, so we weren't too disappointed when we got crushed sometimes, just as long as it felt like we had a fighting chance.
Right. So Dustin in chat says, I like when players can pick their favorite Rangers to play as, but it sounds like that might not be possible. No, it's entirely possible to pick your favorite Rangers. It just depends on how far you want to go to make the optimum team. But any team can beat this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Any team that you put together can beat it because it's not just the cards and the miniatures that you put on the table. It's your personal skill playing those characters and how you work together as a team. So the pieces don't play themselves. The
exactly.
People have a big influence over how those results will turn out.
We wanted to make sure, a lot of the testing was done against just the core 5 Rangers, which is what we balance most content against. Yeah. The core 5 Mighty Morphin Rangers. And we also did several tests where we kind of just took random Ranger spreads, tried them out. And honestly, every Ranger team has a shot, but it definitely helps if you know your squad and you know how they work together really well.
Right. And people play together well too. I mean, we found that in our testing over the last few years. When you get 4 or 5 people together that have never played together, they're not going to play as well as 4 or 5 people that play together on a regular basis. You're just a better machine. You're a better team.
Yeah. Speaking of machines. Good transition, Scott. And speaking of being on a team, we've got Prince Gasket. He is going to be our first official paired monster, along with Princess Archerina, who we'll show soon. So Gasket's cards, they tend to have the fast keyword, you'll see. But let's see, his first card here is Disarming Slash. The Ranger with the most cards in their hand must place 1 random card from their hand on top of their deck, then deal 4 damage to that Ranger. So that card is effectively going to get discarded along with something under it. So depending on what, not only are you losing a card from your hand, he's also slashing into your deck. And then On Guard is a really nice, straightforward, fast guard, deal 4 damage. He's just it's a nice bread and butter card, 4 health guard. It's going to protect his other cards. That's Prince Gasket. And if we move on to Princess Archerina, who he can be paired with.
I love Gasket's shoulder pads. The wings.
They're great. These big old wings. His design is so good.
If I had shoulder pads, that's what I'd want. I'd want wings.
Yeah. So let's see. Let's show Archerina.
And she is.
Okay, so Princess Archerina. So she has Heart Strike, which also has the guard keyword. Deal 4 damage to the Ranger with the most cards in their hand. This is kind of a subtle targeting thing because often having a large hand means you have drawn deep into your deck. And so she is not quite targeting the Ranger with the fewest cards in their deck, but she is targeting the Ranger that may be the biggest threat. One of her signature cards, though, is Enchanting Arrow, which is a 5 health card, nice and beefy hit point pool. But 1 Ranger must discard all attack cards from their hand. If they discarded fewer than 2 cards, deal 4 damage to that Ranger. So the Rangers do get to decide which Ranger takes this hit. And they can even choose a Ranger who has no attack cards in their hand, but then they're just going to eat 4 damage. Otherwise, they might... So optimally, you want to kind of send it to a Ranger with either a lot of attack cards in their hands so they can keep going, or a Ranger who you're willing to let stay in a more supportive role. But she sort of... Archerina has this sort of Cupid's bow effect, where she hits you with the arrow and you don't want to attack her. And so she can really mess up some ranger plans with her ability. Let's see. Question in chat. Why am I so cruel? Because I believe in you guys, and I have faith that they'll anything that I throw at them. Just much faith. I mean,
these guys are tough because they're tough. They should be. It'll be fine. You'll be fine.
So how do I decide which monster cards are a 1, 2, or 3 of? This is sort of a broader design question as I create the deck recipes for these various monsters. A lot of decisions will vary. I do keep in mind how the cards will get laid out, right? Because you will often encounter only 4 of a monster card, and that's half of a monster's deck. I want to make sure that you will be likely to see what the monster's main gimmick is fairly quickly. So they will generally have a really strong passive, which is usually a 1-of. So that's kind of the gamble of, like, do you encounter that or not? But even so, I want to make sure that at least 4 or 5 of their cards, more than half, show the monster's main gimmick and aren't just straight damage or shields or what have you. Damage or high defense. Generally, I also want to keep in mind whether the monster kind of relies on being fast. Several monsters, that's a big part of how they fight, which means that more than half of their cards need to be fast cards to guarantee that one of them appears. You'll even see some very careful design, like in Bones in the base game. All of his cards are fast except for Regeneration, which is important because Regeneration works best when it resolves last. And so that kind of creates that gameplay.
So also in chat just asked, so Jacob Brown says that he's never played scenarios. Could you explain how the Prince Gasket and Princess Archerina pairing will work?
So they actually will have a special deployment card. You'll notice that the box actually contains more deployment cards than usual. There is one for Princess Archerina, one for Prince Gasket, and there's a new one that is both of them. So I don't know if we have a picture of that ready, unfortunately. But there is a deployment card that shows both diamonds, and when that card comes out, you deploy them as a paired monster. And the rule sheet with Machine Empire will explain the broader context of how that works, but effectively, you only need to defeat 2 of each of their cards. We can get into a little more about how they kind of interact together, but Gasket and Archerina also have mechanics that pair together when you're fighting them both. So the cards work in one way when you're fighting them alone, but if you're fighting them together, they will start to kind of defend each other and work well together as their passives kind of interact.
Yep.
Let's see. So after that, let's go with the third monster in the Machine Empire pack, General Venjix. So this was kind of the big surprise, because General Venjix does not show up in the Zeo season. He shows up in Forever Red, which is a very, very popular anniversary special where all of the Red Rangers get to team up, and he sort of leads the Machine Empire remnant. We've sort of added him here because he is an important part of the Machine Empire as a group, and it feels nice to be able to actually have them all together when they didn't quite get them. They didn't really get an opportunity to interact in the show proper. So here you get to see General Venjix fight alongside his Machine Empire brethren. And we're getting a little cheeky with some of these card names, but I'll say no more on that front. So let's talk about his passive ability, Machine Empire Elite. So while this card is in play, the shield value of all combat cards with exactly 3 shields is reduced by 2. So that means all of your power weapons are now 1 shield cards. All of a huge number of your strongest cards are now reduced to 1 shield, which can get really bad with his other card, Big Bad Beating, which is fast, and the lead ranger must discard cards from the top of their deck until they've discarded at least 3 shields or are defeated. This means that even if all 3 of your 3 shield cards are on top of your deck, you have 9 shields. If Machine Empire Elite and Big Bad Beating resolve, you lose all 3 of them. Because they are all reduced to 1 shield each, so he just punches right through them. He's pretty mean.
Yeah.
He's another one who targets lead rangers, and that's part of a reference to him being in Forever Red, where he's up against Red Rangers, who are predominantly leaders of their respective teams. And so Venjix, he doesn't like those guys.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So, another question in chat.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's asking about, could you go into detail on the reasoning on the power level tracker on the Zord tracker? So this is really not related to what we're talking about, but it's an interesting question. I don't see the point of why it's there because I can see many Zords I have left. Oh, really? You don't understand why the Zord tracker's there?
I mean, it's nice for reference so that you don't have to look around to each player, and, you know, as they, like, resolve their Zord cards, etc. Like, having your attention being able to be focused on one point of the board is quite helpful. And it does allow us to use, we haven't dealt with it yet, but it would allow us design space to reference where you are on the power level track with different character mechanics. So there can be enemies that scale with power depending on where you are on the power level track. You know, not saying anything. But that could totally be a thing, and that just gives us that lever to pull. Not only that, I was personally really proud of the design of that track using kind of the power coin and the little morpher peering through it. And it also just feels nice to move that tracker up as you level up. It just kind of gives, that's just kind of a pleasant little thing. But primarily, it gives us design space. It lets people focus on, like, okay, where are we? How close are we to the Megazord? You can just kind of look and see really quickly without having to stop and count anything.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to use it, that's fine, but it certainly doesn't hurt being there. And sometime down the road, it might have a...
Who knows? It's not saying that. Who knows? Just wait.
Right, just wait.
All right. Let's see. So those are the three monsters that are in the Machine Empire pack. Let's go with the bosses. Louis Kaboom, I think, should come next. So Louis Kaboom is one of my favorite enemies in all of Power Rangers. He's just this huge goofball, and I mean, look at him. He's a giant bomb with arms and legs. So Louis Kaboom, one of his signature cards is Bunker Buster. Just a beefy 5 health card with each ranger must discard the top card and the bottom card of their deck. So it's kind of, that's a bit of thematic joking of, like, Bunker Buster is able to punch through the top of, armor and then wait until they get into the most sensitive parts of a machine or a bunker before exploding. So he hits the top card of your deck, and then he goes to the bottom of your deck and hits that too, which is often where your 3 shield cards end up, because that is, based on the way defense goes, your higher shield cards will generally gravitate to the bottom of your deck. So he sort of precision targets those. And then, at the end of any battle with Louis Kaboom, you might encounter the Warhead, which is a 5 health card, not too bad to chew through, but it cannot be dealt any damage until all other Louis Kaboom cards in this battle have been defeated. Then deal 6 damage to each ranger at the end of this battle. So Warhead is this, like, one could call it a ticking time bomb, that has the ability to deal, like, if you're playing with a team of 5 rangers, that's 30 damage that it deals if it goes off. And it's real scary. If it's,
that's like a Scorched Earth card, right? Like, I'm just gonna nuke you and...
Yep. Having to chew through all of his cards, and also, this is important because this will resolve even if it's the second fight with Louis Kaboom. So normally, the second fight with a boss, you only have to defeat 2 or 3 cards to finish off the boss. But with this, unless you take out all of the other cards and then stop Warhead, or, prep all of your damage mitigation for that going off, you may still lose when Warhead goes off, as it blows up all the Rangers, and he takes you with him. Louis Kaboom's pretty mean.
So somebody's asking, does that include effect damage?
So yes, meaning that you cannot place hit tokens on that card. It just cannot be dealt damage through from secondary effects, Megazords. You can't hurt it. It cannot be harmed until all the other cards are defeated. And let's see. Next, we've got the King of the Machine Empire, King Mondo himself.
All right, and 1 second. For some reason, it's not wanting to switch. 1 second. And there you go.
So we've got King Mondo, the Machine King. So he, of course, has a very powerful passive, which is, while this card is in play, Each time a ranger rolls dice for an attack, remove 1 die from that attack and place 1 hit token on this card. I'll note that removal is meant to happen before the ranger rolls. So when you roll, you remove the die before you see the results. So you effectively lose 1 die on each of your attacks. This can be countered by things like TJ, which allows you to remove die before and just deal direct damage. But overall, it sort of limits a lot of the damage rangers can deal to him, which is going to be important as we're going to see one of his other cards later. One of his other bread and butter cards, though, is Imperial Fist. Remarkably, it is shown that King Mondo has a really strong jab. He punches really hard. He's got this sort of piston fist. And so it's a fast card. It deals 4 damage, and the ranger who suffers that damage must discard a random card from their hand, kind of just punching you in the face, leaving you delirious. It's sort of a funny thing that this regal big king guy also has a mean right hook, but there it is.
Well, how do you think he became king?
He just punched his way to the top, clearly.
That's right.
Let's see. If Phantom Ranger was to fight Louis Kaboom, there's got a question in Twitch, and he leaves battle to his card before Warhead resolves, do the defeated cards count towards beating him? Yes. That is actually a great answer to getting out of dodge if you're dealing with Warhead. If the Phantom Ranger bolts and you have enough lives to spare that the Rangers that are left are okay, or you can survive that out, the Phantom Ranger can dodge out of Louis Kaboom's Warhead, which is very clever. I'm surprised. A lot of times I'm really impressed by this community, because a lot of them manage to figure out answers once they see the preview cards. They go through and oh man, who's going to do this? And very quickly, someone, usually not everyone, but someone in the Facebook group is going to find, it would be great to use against this guy. And I'm very proud that you guys have learned the game this well.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Yeah, but, one ranger getting out of dodge won't help you if you don't have any lives to spare, unfortunately.
All right, well, cool, there we go.
We've got one more set, though. We put together a slide of just kind of a little collection of cards from each of the Machine Empire characters.
And let me get those.
Let's bring that up.
Let me get those up. For some reason, it's not wanting to go right when I click the first time. There we go. All right.
It's a holiday. Everything's movable.
Yeah.
Yeah, such as it is. But yeah, all right. So here's that card we had mentioned with King Mondo, the Sword of Damocles. It is the most health on any card in the game, and it does the most damage of any card in the game right now. It is a 10 health card with guard, so it's not going to get guarded, thankfully. But its power is deal 10 damage to each ranger. Reduce this damage by 1 for each hit token on this card. So if you can manage to even bring it down to deal 8 or 9 damage to it, it's not going to hurt too bad, but it's going to hang over your head until it triggers. And it can hit incredibly hard if you don't manage to take it out. I think generally in most of our tests, you do manage to hit it with at least a few hits, but oof, man, the Sword of Damocles is a scary card. Then we've got Thunderburst, fast, 4 health, deal 3 damage to each ranger. It's sort of a lightweight version of Rita's Chain Lightning, which felt appropriate because it's kind of electric themed. Louis Kaboom's Explosive Entrance is one of his fast cards, with 6 health, meaning you're going to have to chew through 6 more health before getting to Warhead. And otherwise, though, its effect is roll a die and deal 3 times that much damage to each ranger. So, a lot of the times you're just going to roll a blank. I'm going to roll a blank. You've seen me roll dice.
Yeah. That's not when you roll blanks, though. When you're rolling against yourself, you don't roll blanks.
Then you crit. You roll the 2 hits.
Right.
So usually it deals about 4 damage to each ranger, which is equivalent on par with something like Rita's Chain Lightning. Or occasionally it'll blow up and deal 6 damage to each ranger, which is much worse. Usually it'll deal 3 damage to each ranger, and then 6. And sometimes it'll just be a dud. And bombs be like that sometimes. But if Warhead is out, that is a 6 health card that you still have to chew through. In general, you gotta beat his cards. And so this is one of those cards that's it hits you and may not hit that hard, but you still gotta chew through it. We've got Lover's Barrage, which is this shows it as a Prince Gasket card. This card is one that appears both in Prince Gasket and Princess Archerina's decks. Both of them have one copy of Lover's Barrage, and because it is their team-up move, it deals 2 damage to each ranger. Then, if any Prince Gasket or Princess Archerina cards have been defeated, deal 3 damage to each ranger. So, or discarded is mostly there in case that you had to fight them for a second time. Or if you are playing a game and Princess Archerina was the first monster you defeated, Prince Gasket will be out for revenge, or vice versa. Lover's Barrage is sort of this card that scales as the two of them lose cards and they kind of work together. It can be pretty beefy. Meanwhile, we've also got Lover's Shot, which is Princess Archerina's passive. While this card is in play, each time a ranger deals any amount of hits to a card with the fast or guard keyword, they must discard the top card of their deck. This is sort of her kind of defending from the rear, just laying down lots of arrows and forcing top deck discards. And this means that if you power axe unwisely, it is possible to discard 4 cards from the top of your deck when you lay down that shot, which is I would not recommend it.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Let's see. Oh, hey, someone asked related to this expansion, but it was mentioned earlier that defeated boss or monster cards still resolve. Does that mean that the Rangers effectively get a free turn? Yes. So this is a core element of the combat system in Heroes of the Grid. If you can defeat an enemy card before it resolves, that means the enemies waste that turn. Some enemy cards, like Finster or Prince Gasket or other characters, have abilities that become more dangerous the more times things get defeated. And as we saw, Psycho Red in particular makes those defeated cards still deal damage. But yeah, that is effectively one of the best ways to stay ahead of the game. That is it is a big part of how you should compose your strategy when playing Heroes of the Grid. And so those are all of the bad guys we are previewing for this stream.
All right, so let's give it another few seconds and see if we have any other questions in any of the 3 different chats that are running, and we'll wrap things up.
Right. So we actually do a reference. So someone asks in the questions for Jen's ability, Jen Scott, who is Time Force Pink. Her ability allows her to move around cards in their respective rows. So if they're a monster or boss or foot soldier, she can swap them to the front. She can swap them around. Does this work on Nemesis cards because they have a new icon? We actually we're careful about that. We put the icon reference in that in parenthetical text, which is just reminder text. So that is not core to her rules. Her rules just say enemy cards that share a type. So she can do this to any Nemesis cards. And we clarify this further in the rule sheet, where we say Nemesis cards are treated as monster cards for the purposes of abilities like that, or like Jen Scott's ability, or Anubis Kruger's Judgment.
All right, cool. So somebody in Facebook chat asked, will we be doing a stream to show off the Psycho mode, how it will work or play? So right now we're a little limited as far as getting the whole gang together in terms of new stuff. We're still practicing social distancing, and
I haven't seen Gary in weeks.
Yeah, right. But eventually down the road, I'm sure that we will be playing with the Psychos and the Machine Empire during our regular streams once we get those back on track. But for now, we're still operating remotely, pretty much 100%. So.
And Chris and I will try to do our best on Tuesdays once in a while, but if you saw the last one 2 weeks ago, I had some Jonathan rolls myself, so.
Oh, God, I'm getting a rep.
Right.
That's why we have the reroll token. It's okay.
Nice.
There you go. Let's see. So, can we talk more about the scheme deck and how Mastermind play works? We are at the tail end of the campaign. Scott, may I have permission to talk a little more about Mastermind?
Sure. I think so.
Cool. So yeah, Mastermind Mode is really exciting. I'm really it's pretty crazy getting to finally shift this game into a 1v-many game style, because that is kind of where I grew up with a lot of my previous game designs, like Imperial Assault and Doom. And so Mastermind Mode effectively shifts the game from being an AI-controlled co-op game to being a one versus many game where the team of Rangers are up against a single player controlling all of the enemies. Mastermind Mode effectively plays much like the normal game with a couple of tweaks. The biggest one being to the combat grid, which changes from being a 2x4 grid that resolves in order to a 3x3 grid that resolves based on how the Mastermind chooses to direct their attention. So effectively, the Mastermind will decide how they want to lay cards out on this grid, and then which card they want to resolve next. So let's say, if the Mastermind has a fast card, they get to open up with a certain card, and they will move a token to decide what card is going to resolve next on that grid. The Rangers then have their turn to try and interrupt it or destroy that card, or kind of deal coverage to other cards, and then the Mastermind will resolve the card they declared, and then move that token on. So it kind of creates this nice interplay. We didn't want to give the Mastermind total control over enemy resolution, because it became too easy and too powerful, they would just wreck the players. Because the game is designed to be really challenging when it is just a bunch of cards operating on a set of simple rules. And so if you add a human brain and actual vindictive strategy to it, the game does get significantly harder.
Yeah, I'm all about Mastermind Mode.
Yep. The Mastermind does also get a small deck of scheme cards, which kind of function like Ranger reactions, that allows them to, mess with the Rangers in various ways, forcing discards, buffing monster health, occasionally draining energy. They're all fairly little tweaks, and they get them. I think they get 2 at the start of each round, and then they get to draw a couple more when the Rangers battle monsters or bosses. So the scheme cards are sort of heavily tied to those encounters, but you can still use them in foot soldier fights, and it can be very useful to make those foot soldier fights much tougher for the Rangers to slow them down. Also, in Mastermind Mode, to compensate for this, Masterminds do not get 3 foot soldier deployment cards ever. They are swapped out with Mastermind deck 2 foot soldier deployment cards, which give them a little more control over where they get to deploy, but deploy overall fewer foot soldiers over the course of the game.
Right, because you're having a little bit more control over where they're going, and that's gonna balance out.
Yeah, over which ones you're pulling and where they're going.
Yeah.
Also, panic loss works differently in Mastermind Mode. You don't lose instantly on panic. Instead, you kind of go into sudden death, where if at the end of the round there is panic, you lose all energy tokens in the command center, so all of your extra lives go away. And then, if any area is still panicked at the end of the next round, the Rangers lose. So you kind of get a little more breathing room than normal.
Yeah. And I believe there's a nice article over on the Kickstarter page about Mastermind Mode.
Yeah,
so,
and yes, Mastermind is completely compatible with Psycho Assault Mode.
Yeah. So head over to the Kickstarter if you haven't read that article yet. Jonathan kind of goes into the development process behind that. I think so. Let's see. One more question. You have anything in Twitch or YouTube?
So there is a mention of details regarding Quantrons, and I realized I didn't put that in the slideshow at first, but I do have the slide if we want to look at it.
It had Quantron
For some reason, it wasn't in the original slides, but I do have the slide if we wanted to show it.
Yeah, let's do it on the foot soldier slide, because people do want foot soldiers.
So, and it is up. I'm not sure if you can see it. If you need me to read it off, let me know. Otherwise, it is up now.
All right, so let's see. Oh, right. Phalanx Formation. So this is one of the new, this is a new foot soldier card that works very differently from Swarm Attack, but it does relate to the number of foot soldiers in a location. So Phalanx Formation is a guard card with a health value of X, which we have not seen before, and a passive ability. When it resolves, it drains 1 health value is constantly adjusted to be equal to the number of foot soldiers in this location. That does mean you can kind of defeat it secondarily by dealing a couple damage to that card and then hitting and then taking out other foot soldier cards. Because if its health gets reduced below the number of hit tokens on it, it just gets immediately defeated. And then we've got Cyber Slash, which I believe, let's see, I actually can't read it on the stream because my resolution is too low.
Try to read it, or Scott, if you can see it.
Go ahead. Sure. So it says deal 3 damage unless a ranger discards 1 card from their hand to prevent it.
Right, yeah. So we're kind of leaning into giving these Quantrons have a little more choice. They're very interactive as enemies, and I find them one of the most fun enemies to fight because all of their hits are kind of a little more intense than normal hits, but they give you options of how you want to take the hit, which Cyber Slash is a great example of. They also have a card called Priority Target, which we're not showing here, which just bum rushes the lead ranger, and that is the opposite of that, but it's fun. We've got a couple more questions here, but we are kind of at the tail end of our time. Do we want to go for one more question before we go? What do we think?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see. Let's see. Mastermind does not get 3-foot soldier deployments. How do 1-foot soldier deployments work in 6 ranger mode? Those actually work like normal. They just lose the 3-foot soldier deployment cards. That's kind of an easy one. Favorite monster or boss to use in Mastermind mode? I mean, I really like using Lord Drakon in Mastermind mode. He's just super scary. And you can kind of arrange him in such a way to be even scarier, as well as the fact that there's a scheme card that lets you drain energy, allowing you to, kind of immediately power up his stolen power card. Means Lord Drakon is just extra mean. Let's see. Also, because I'm a jerk, I like using Scorpina and Ranger Slayer, which force Rangers to skip turns, because then I get to just kind of act with impunity.
You're giving too many people too many evil ideas.
That's true. That's kind of the thing I'm worried about with Mastermind mode. Make sure you're very good friends with the people you're playing in Mastermind mode, and buy them lunch afterwards, because this may be the mode that will ruin some friendships if you go hard.
Well, right? This is an experience that you want to opt into.
Yeah, you're the big bad, right?
Yeah, you're a big fan, and you want a chance to play the bad guys, but also this is, like you mentioned before, a human being is now making decisions, which is going to up the game, because if somebody's a good player that knows the game mechanics well, and you set that loose on other players, it's going to be a tougher experience.
Yeah, I do sometimes, even when I play, I do like to play Mastermind mode with newer players, and then just kind of intentionally hold back and kind of just make the game as exciting as possible. But that's very Dungeon Master of me,
right.
And you could, that is a valid way to play, and I think it's really cool. But most of our testing was done to make sure the Mastermind is serious, competitive, go head to head against your other friends who know how to play the game. Our testers got really competitive as we were testing it out. There was a lot of "I'll show you."
Yeah. But if you want to do it as a story mode sort of a thing too, and as the Mastermind, create a narrative experience and kind of bring your players through a ebb and flow, and kind of that emotional roller coaster that you go through, is that's okay too. But I think most of us are going to play it to wipe them out.
Yeah, I mean, I know you are, Scott.
They all must. All right, so I think we're coming to the end. If you are not a member of our Facebook group, you should be a member of our Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid Facebook group, because this type of conversation is happening in there all day, every day, 24/7. People are tagging Jonathan, tagging Scott, tagging Terry, asking questions. We love it when you tag us, especially on weekends. It's the best thing ever. No, but seriously, it's a great community. 90% of the time, the questions that the community is asking can be answered by the community, which is wonderful. So join the Facebook group, get in there. There's about 5,000 Power Rangers heroes already. Jump in, join the fun, new friends. So last but not least, we are creeping up. We are almost in the last 24 hours of the Kickstarter campaign. So if you want to get in on that, head over there now. It'll end tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Pacific time, according to Desiree. If I'm wrong, it's her fault.
Oh.
And yeah, come join us over there. Ask questions. Join the Facebook group. Check out renegadegames.com. Power Rangers resources on there. All the scenarios. We put out monthly scenarios every month. That's why they're called monthly scenarios. And you can download them for free off of the website. You can download updated rule books. You can download all sorts of resources on the website. And we may have some other Power Rangers online resources coming in the next couple months that are in the works.
I am really excited for the next few scenarios. Like, they're going to be some of my favorites.
Yeah, the scenarios are great. Oh, subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's playthroughs up there. Subscribe to our Twitch channel if you want to watch live playthroughs on Twitch. But if you can't make it on Twitch, we post them to YouTube. We've just got Power Rangers covered every which way. So I think that's it. I think we're done.
All right. May the power protect you.
There you go. Thanks. See you next time.